On an ordinary evening in October 1997, in the serene town of Pushkar, India, a place known for its sacred lakes and peaceful temples, a dark secret unraveled, shaking the community to its core. Ravi Desai, a respected mechanic and devoted husband, walked into a police station with a confession that would haunt the town forever. What began as a love story between two hopeful souls spiraled into betrayal, manipulation, and an act of unimaginable despair. How did Ravi's life, so simple and filled with dreams, descend into chaos? Let's delve into this tragic tale of love gone awry and the devastating consequences of misplaced trust. Stay with me, as this story reveals twists and turns that will leave you questioning the very nature of relationships and loyalty. Ravi Desai's life began in 1961 in a modest village near Agra, where the rhythm of life was dictated by the seasons and the crops they nurtured. The village, a patchwork of thatched roofs and dusty lanes, offered little in material wealth but much in the way of community spirit. For Ravi, however, this world of simplicity was overshadowed by personal tragedy. When he was just 10 years old, his father passed away unexpectedly, leaving Ravi's mother to shoulder the burden of providing for the family. As the eldest of 3 siblings, Ravi instinctively stepped into a caretaker role. His days were long, filled with chores on the family's small plot of land. He helped sow seeds, tended to livestock, and harvested crops alongside his mother. Despite his young age, Ravi's determination to support his family was evident. He balanced his responsibilities at home with school, often studying by the dim light of an oil lamp after a day's work. Life in the village was not without its hardships. The family's income was dependent on the unpredictable weather, and droughts or floods could spell disaster. Yet, Ravi's mother's resilience inspired him. She would tell him, "The land gives us what it can, but our will gives us the strength to persevere." These words stayed with Ravi, shaping his character and his unwavering sense of duty. By his late teens, Ravi had completed high school, a feat in itself in a village where education often took a backseat to survival. Encouraged by his mother, he decided to leave for Pushkar, a small yet bustling town known for its temples, vibrant bazaars, and a steady stream of tourists. Pushkar represented a world of opportunities, a chance to escape the cycle of poverty that had defined his family's existence. Ravi's arrival in Pushkar was marked by both excitement and trepidation. He found work as an assistant at a local car repair shop, a modest establishment that catered to both locals and tourists. His initial tasks were menial cleaning tools, changing tires, and fetching tea for the senior mechanics. But Ravi approached these tasks with diligence, observing and learning from the skilled hands of the mechanics around him. His natural curiosity and eagerness to learn did not go unnoticed. Within months, he was entrusted with basic repair work. Over time, Ravi's skills grew, and so did his reputation. Customers admired his honesty and attention to detail. He never overcharged, even when he knew his clients wouldn't question a higher bill. For Ravi, the satisfaction of a job well done was its own reward. Pushkar, with its colorful markets and serene lakes, became Ravi's home. He rented a small room near the repair shop and lived frugally, sending a portion of his earnings back to his family. His life, though modest, was one of purpose and fulfillment. In the evenings, Ravi would often sit by Pushkar Lake, reflecting on how far he had come from the dusty fields of his village. The community in Pushkar came to know Ravi as a man of integrity. His customers trusted him implicitly, and his employer relied on him as the backbone of the shop. Yet, Ravi remained humble, his thoughts often drifting to his family and their struggles. His dream was simple: to provide a better life for his siblings and to see his mother live without worry. Despite the challenges, Ravi's determination never wavered. He was a man anchored by his values, a quiet force of reliability in a world that often rewarded cunning over honesty. Little did he know, his steadfast nature and trusting heart would soon be tested in ways he could never have imagined. In 1986, Ravi's life took a transformative turn when he wandered into a handicraft shop one bustling afternoon. The shop, filled with the vibrant hues of embroidered fabrics, handmade trinkets, and the aroma of sandalwood, was a favorite among tourists and locals alike. Ravi's intent was simple: to find gifts for his mother and siblings. Little did he know, his visit would change the trajectory of his life. Behind the counter stood Priya, a vivacious young woman whose radiant smile and graceful demeanor immediately caught Ravi's attention. Priya had moved to Pushkar from Jaipur, seeking a fresh start and an escape from the comparisons to her elder sisters, who were deemed more accomplished by her family. The weight of living in their shadow had driven Priya to carve her own path, away from the constraints of familial expectations. Priya was known in the town for her charm and wit. Customers were drawn not only to the shop's unique offerings but also to her warm, engaging personality. She had a natural talent for conversation, effortlessly making people feel at ease. For Ravi, her presence was magnetic. Unlike the tourists who often vied for Priya's attention, Ravi's simplicity and sincerity set him apart. Priya couldn't help but notice the quiet humility in his demeanor, a stark contrast to the boastful nature of many she encountered daily. Ravi's initial visits to the shop were brief and practical, focused solely on purchasing gifts. However, as days turned into weeks, he found reasons to return more frequently. Each visit became an opportunity to exchange words with Priya, their conversations growing longer and more personal. They spoke of their dreams, their struggles, and their shared desire for a life filled with purpose and stability. For Priya, Ravi represented a sense of security she had never known. His unwavering determination and genuine kindness made her feel valued and respected. In Ravi's eyes, Priya was a beacon of light, her optimism and drive reigniting a spark he hadn't realized was missing in his own life. Over time, their bond deepened, built on mutual admiration and the comforting knowledge that they could be their authentic selves with one another. By the end of the year, Ravi mustered the courage to confess his feelings. In a quiet moment near Pushkar Lake, under a sky painted with the warm hues of sunset, Ravi proposed to Priya. His words were heartfelt, devoid of grand gestures but rich with sincerity. Priya, moved by his honesty and the depth of his character, accepted without hesitation. Despite their contrasting upbringings, Ravi's rooted in rural modesty and Priya's shaped by urban ambition, they found common ground in their shared values and aspirations. Their wedding in early 1987 was a simple yet joyous affair. Held in a small temple adorned with marigolds, it was attended by close family and friends. The ceremony, though modest, was imbued with a sense of hope and promise. As they exchanged vows, Ravi silently vowed to provide Priya with a life of stability and happiness, while Priya committed herself to supporting Ravi in his endeavors. Their early days as a married couple were marked by a blend of hard work and quiet contentment. Ravi continued to dedicate himself to his repair shop, while Priya managed their home with care and efficiency. Together, they navigated the challenges of building a life from humble beginnings, their love and mutual respect serving as a strong foundation. However, as time passed, the monotony of daily life began to wear on Priya. The spark that had once defined their relationship started to dim, and she found herself yearning for the excitement and freedom of her days in the handicraft shop. Unbeknownst to Ravi, this restlessness would soon set the stage for a series of events that would test the very fabric of their marriage. Initially, life was peaceful. Ravi poured his heart into expanding his auto repair shop, turning it into a reliable source of income. His days were filled with hard work, laughter with customers, and the quiet satisfaction of a job well done. Priya, meanwhile, handled their household with diligence. Yet, beneath the surface, an unspoken tension began to grow. Priya often reminisced about her days at the handicraft shop, the lively conversations, the admiration from customers, and the vibrant energy of Pushkar's markets. The mundane routine of managing a household felt suffocating. She missed the independence and the sense of being seen. While Ravi's love for her was steady and sincere, it lacked the excitement and unpredictability she secretly craved. In 1995, everything changed when Arjun Matra entered their lives. Arjun was a charismatic and enigmatic man, known around Pushkar for his charm and audacious personality. A frequent customer at Ravi's garage, he often came to have his truck serviced. Arjun exuded an air of mystery that intrigued Priya. His boldness, his confident laugh, and the glint of danger in his eyes were in stark contrast to Ravi's quiet, dependable nature. Ravi, ever trusting and unassuming, struck up a friendly rapport with Arjun. The two often chatted about trivial matters while Ravi worked on Arjun's vehicle. Ravi saw Arjun as a loyal customer and welcomed him into their home on occasion, offering tea and hospitality. To Ravi, Arjun was just another friendly face in the community. But Priya saw something different. Arjun represented a world she had never known, a world of risk, thrill, and liberation from the mundane. His casual flirtations, his daring stories of travels and exploits, and his piercing gaze captivated her. For the first time in years, Priya felt alive. Arjun, perceptive and calculating, noticed Priya's growing interest. He began to visit more frequently, his attention shifting subtly from Ravi to Priya. He praised her cooking, complimented her beauty, and shared stories designed to impress and allure. Priya, flattered and drawn to his magnetic presence, found herself looking forward to his visits. As weeks turned into months, Arjun's influence over Priya grew. Ravi, preoccupied with his business and trusting by nature, remained oblivious to the subtle shifts in his wife's behavior. Priya, emboldened by Arjun's attention, began to indulge in fantasies of a life beyond the constraints of her marriage. She justified her feelings as a natural response to the monotony she endured, failing to recognize the storm that was about to engulf their lives. Arjun wasn't just a charming visitor, he was deeply entrenched in a world of illegal activities. Beneath the facade of a confident businessman was a man operating in the shadows, orchestrating smuggling operations and thefts that evaded the local authorities. For him, every connection was a calculated move, and Priya became a pawn in his web of deceit. Arjun's allure was undeniable to Priya, who found herself craving the thrill he brought into her otherwise predictable life. Their interactions, once innocent, turned into private rendezvous under the guise of Arjun seeking Ravi's assistance with mechanical issues. Arjun, knowing Priya's dissatisfaction with her marriage, capitalized on her vulnerability. He presented himself as the antidote to her discontentment, promising her freedom and excitement she had only dreamed of. What began as flirtation quickly escalated into an illicit affair. The secrecy, the stolen glances, and the whispered promises created a whirlwind that Priya could not resist. Arjun fed her tales of a grand future together, one far removed from the confines of her current life. Priya, blinded by the adrenaline and flattery, began to believe in his vision, even as it meant betraying the man who had built a life for her with unwavering dedication. Meanwhile, Ravi, trusting and unassuming, remained blissfully unaware of the betrayal unfolding within his home. Arjun and his associates started frequenting Ravi's house under the pretense of camaraderie. Ravi welcomed them with open arms, offering tea and food, never questioning their intentions. His trusting nature made him an easy target for exploitation. Unbeknownst to Ravi, his home had become a hub for Arjun's illegal dealings. Packages were exchanged, conversations held in hushed tones, and Priya played an integral role in coordinating these operations. Arjun's gang saw her as an asset. Her connection to Ravi provided the perfect cover for their activities. Priya, fully immersed in their world, began to fabricate lies to protect their schemes. She portrayed herself as a victim of an unfulfilling marriage, a narrative that allowed her to justify her actions and win Arjun's continued favor. Ravi's trust in Priya was unwavering, and her deception ran deep. She manipulated situations to keep Ravi in the dark, creating scenarios that painted her as a devoted wife while secretly aiding Arjun's operations. Her dual life required constant vigilance, and the strain began to show. Yet, the thrill of living on the edge overshadowed any guilt she might have felt. Arjun, ever the manipulator, ensured that Priya felt indispensable to their plans. He flattered her, praised her intelligence, and made her believe she was a key player in their success. Priya, intoxicated by the power and attention, failed to see that she was merely a pawn in a much larger game. Arjun's promises of a future together were hollow, designed to keep her loyalty while he pursued his own agenda. The house that Ravi had built with love and hard work had transformed into a theater of lies and danger. Priya's betrayal deepened as she became more entwined with Arjun's world. Packages that came and went, conversations cut short when Ravi entered the room, all were signs of a growing undercurrent of deceit. And yet, Ravi remained oblivious, his faith in Priya and his new friend unshaken. The cracks in their marriage had widened into chasms, and Priya was no longer the woman Ravi thought he knew. The thrill of her double life had consumed her, blinding her to the inevitable consequences of her actions. The stage was set for a reckoning, one that would unravel the lives of everyone involved. In October 1997, Ravi's world shattered. On a quiet afternoon, while cleaning Priya's desk, he stumbled upon a letter tucked away beneath a pile of papers. The envelope was worn, its edges frayed from frequent handling, as though Priya had reread it countless times. The contents of the letter were devastating, a confession of her affair with Arjun and explicit details of their criminal activities. The words leapt off the page, each one a dagger piercing Ravi's heart. Priya described in vivid detail how she had deceived him, using their home as a base for Arjun's operations. She mocked his simplicity, referring to him as naive and blind to reality. It was not just the betrayal of love that crushed Ravi, but the realization that his trust and hard work had been exploited in such a calculated manner. The letter painted an image of a life Ravi had been completely unaware of, a life where his wife played a central role in the deceit that had infiltrated their home. She had even written about her contempt for his trust, laughing at how easy it was to manipulate him. Ravi felt his entire world collapsing. The woman he had loved unconditionally, for whom he had sacrificed so much, had reduced him to a pawn in a cruel game. The shock gave way to a torrent of emotions: anger, heartbreak, humiliation, and an overwhelming sense of betrayal. Ravi could barely breathe as he held the letter, his hands trembling. His mind raced with memories of their life together, their wedding day, the shared dreams, the quiet evenings spent in what he had thought was contentment. All of it felt like a cruel joke now, a facade hiding the truth. Determined to confront Priya, Ravi waited for her to return home. When she walked through the door, her cheerful demeanor only fueled his anger. He held up the letter without a word, his eyes filled with pain. Priya's face paled as she realized what he had discovered. For a moment, there was silence, a tense pause where Ravi hoped for some sign of remorse. But Priya's response shattered whatever hope remained. Instead of apologizing, she laughed a cold, mocking sound that cut through Ravi like a knife. She called him weak, accusing him of being unable to provide the life she deserved. Her words were laced with disdain, tearing apart whatever remained of Ravi's already shattered self-esteem. The argument that followed was explosive. Ravi demanded answers, his voice trembling with rage and heartbreak. Priya, however, stood her ground, her defiance only adding fuel to the fire. She accused him of stifling her, of trapping her in a life of mediocrity. Each word was a blow, leaving Ravi reeling. Unable to process the magnitude of the betrayal, Ravi retreated into silence. He left the house, walking aimlessly through the streets of Pushkar as the weight of the truth bore down on him. The memories of their life together played in his mind, now tainted by the knowledge of Priya's duplicity. He felt like a man adrift, his once solid foundation crumbling beneath him. Ravi's thoughts were a whirlwind of confusion and pain. He questioned everything: his judgment, his worth, and the very nature of love and trust. How had he been so blind? How could the woman he had adored betray him so completely? The answers eluded him, lost in the storm of emotions that threatened to consume him. Unbeknownst to Ravi, this revelation was only the beginning. The events set into motion by Priya's betrayal would soon lead him down a path of darkness and despair, one that would forever alter the course of his life. The night of October 15, 1997, began like any other, but it would soon descend into chaos. Ravi sat alone in the living room, the weight of his discoveries pressing down on him like an unbearable burden. The silence in the house was deafening, broken only by the distant hum of crickets outside. His mind raced, replaying the events of the past few days: the letter, Priya's mocking words, and the realization that his home had been turned into a den of deceit. At around 9 p.m., the quiet was shattered by the sound of voices approaching the house. Arjun and his associates had arrived, as they often did, their boisterous laughter echoing through the night. Ravi's heart pounded in his chest as he heard their footsteps on the porch. The very sight of them, so comfortable in a space that should have been his sanctuary, ignited a fire within him. The men entered without hesitation, their presence imposing and unapologetic. Ravi remained seated, his hands clenched into fists, his eyes fixed on the floor. The tension in the room was palpable, a storm brewing beneath the surface. Arjun, as bold as ever, greeted Ravi with a smirk, his tone dripping with condescension. "Ah, Ravi," Arjun began, his voice laced with mockery, "still sitting there like the loyal dog, aren't you? It must be tiring, carrying the weight of all this ignorance." His associates chuckled, their laughter echoing through the room like a taunt. Ravi remained silent, his gaze fixed on the iron bar leaning against the wall. The words Arjun spoke felt like sharp needles, each one piercing deeper into the raw wound left by Priya's betrayal. The men continued their banter, their voices growing louder and more abrasive. Ravi's mind was a whirlwind of rage and despair, each memory of his sacrifices for Priya flashing before him like a cruel montage. Priya entered the room shortly after, her expression unreadable. She did not seem fazed by the tension, nor did she make any effort to comfort Ravi. Instead, she walked toward Arjun, her demeanor casual, as if his presence was as natural as the furniture in their home. The sight of her standing so close to the man who had ruined everything shattered what little composure Ravi had left. Arjun leaned back in his chair, his confidence oozing from every gesture. "You know, Ravi, you should thank me. I've shown Priya what life could be, beyond this monotony. You can't really blame her for wanting more, can you? The smirk on his face was the last straw. Ravi shot up from his seat, his body trembling with rage. You've done nothing but destroy what little peace we had, he shouted, his voice raw with emotion. The room fell silent for a moment, the air heavy with tension. Arjun, unfazed, rose to meet Ravi's gaze. He stepped closer, his tone dropping to a menacing whisper. And what are you going to do about it? You're just a mechanic, Ravi. A simple man, out of his depth. The taunt ignited a fire Ravi could no longer control. He reached for the iron bar, gripping it tightly as years of trust, love, and patience dissolved into a storm of anguish. His vision blurred with tears and fury as he raised the weapon, his voice trembling as he bellowed, "You've taken everything from me." The first swing landed with a sickening thud, cutting through the air with devastating force. Arjun stumbled back, shock etched across his face as he crumpled to the floor. The room erupted into chaos. Arjun's associates lunged at Ravi, but he had been consumed by a force far beyond fear or hesitation. The years of pent-up frustration and betrayal guided his every move. Furniture shattered, screams filled the air, and the once peaceful home became a battlefield. Ravi fought like a man possessed, his every strike fueled by the weight of his broken heart. The associates tried to overpower him, but Ravi's raw desperation gave him a strength they hadn't anticipated. One by one, they fell, their arrogance replaced by fear as the realization of their underestimation dawned too late. When the commotion finally subsided, silence blanketed the room, save for Ravi's ragged breathing. He stood amidst the carnage, the iron bar slipping from his bloodied hands and clattering to the floor. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the lifeless bodies of Arjun and his men. His chest heaved as he tried to make sense of what he had just done. Then, his gaze fell on Priya. She stood frozen in the corner, her face pale with shock and fear. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but Ravi saw no remorse, only the fear of consequences. "Why?" he choked, his voice barely a whisper. "After everything I've done for you, why?" Priya's lips quivered as she tried to form a response, but no words came. Ravi stepped toward her, his expression a mixture of heartbreak and rage. "You were my everything, Priya," he said, his voice breaking. "I gave you my life, and you gave it to him." In one final, devastating moment, Ravi raised the bar once more. The weight of his heartbreak and betrayal drove his actions, and when it was over, the room descended into an eerie stillness. Ravi dropped to his knees, the iron bar clanging against the floor as his hands fell limp at his sides. The stench of blood filled the air, a grim testament to the irreversible tragedy that had unfolded. Ravi's shoulders shook as silent sobs racked his body, the magnitude of his actions crashing down on him like a tidal wave. In the dim light of the room, surrounded by the aftermath of his anguish, Ravi Desai was no longer the man he once was. The following morning, the streets of Pushkar were quiet, their usual hustle subdued by the early hour. Ravi Desai walked the familiar path to the police station, his steps heavy and deliberate. His clothes bore the unmistakable stains of the previous night's violence, the dark red splatters a stark contrast to the crisp dawn light. The weight of his actions pressed heavily on his shoulders, each step feeling like a penance. As he approached the police station, Ravi's mind replayed the events of the night before in vivid detail. The heated argument, the mocking laughter of Arjun and his associates, Priya's cold indifference, all of it culminated in a rage he could no longer contain. He had acted without thought, driven by a maelstrom of emotions, heartbreak, betrayal, and an overwhelming sense of humiliation. Now, standing at the threshold of the station, Ravi knew there was no turning back. Inside, the officers looked up from their desks, their expressions shifting from boredom to shock as they took in Ravi's disheveled appearance. His blood-stained clothes and hollow eyes spoke volumes before he uttered a single word. Breaking the silence, Ravi said in a steady voice, "I need to confess. I've killed them all." The room fell silent, the weight of his statement hanging heavily in the air. The officers, initially skeptical, quickly realized the gravity of the situation. Ravi began to recount everything, his voice steady but filled with a quiet anguish. He spoke of the betrayal he had uncovered, the confrontation with Priya, and the mocking taunts of Arjun and his group. He described how his emotions had spiraled out of control, leading to the fatal moment when he grabbed the iron bar. As Ravi's confession unfolded, the officers listened intently, their pens moving rapidly to capture every detail. He spared no part of the story, painting a vivid picture of the events that had turned his home into a scene of unimaginable violence. There was no attempt to justify his actions, no plea for leniency. Ravi's only aim was to tell the truth, no matter how damning it was. A team of officers was dispatched to Ravi's home to verify his account. As they entered the modest house, the reality of his confession became painfully clear. The living room bore the scars of a violent struggle, broken furniture, bloodstains on the walls and floor, and the lifeless bodies of Arjun, his associates, and Priya. The sight was both shocking and sobering, a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked emotions. Back at the station, Ravi sat quietly in a holding cell, his hands clasped tightly as if in silent prayer. The initial adrenaline of his confession had worn off, leaving him with the full weight of his actions. He thought of his mother, his siblings, and the life he had worked so hard to build now reduced to ruins. Yet, amidst the despair, there was a strange sense of relief. The truth was out, and he no longer had to carry the burden of his secrets alone. The news of Ravi's confession spread quickly through Pushkar, the small town abuzz with whispers and speculation. Neighbors and acquaintances struggled to reconcile the image of the kind, hard-working mechanic with the man who had committed such a brutal crime. Some pitied him, seeing him as a victim of betrayal and circumstance, while others condemned his actions, unable to excuse the taking of 5 lives. For Ravi, the journey of accountability had just begun. The legal system would soon take over, determining the consequences of his actions. But in that moment, as he sat in the quiet of the police station, Ravi's thoughts were not of his impending trial or punishment. Instead, they were of the love he had lost, the trust that had been broken, and the life that could never be reclaimed. The trial of Ravi Desai captivated the entire nation, its details splashed across headlines and whispered about in markets and tea shops. A simple mechanic turned murderer, his tale was a dark reflection of love twisted into obsession and betrayal. In the courtroom, the atmosphere was tense, every testimony a painful reminder of the events that had unfolded on that fateful night. Prosecutors were relentless in their portrayal of Ravi as a cold-blooded killer. They described his actions as premeditated and cruel, pointing to the brutal manner in which he had taken 5 lives, including that of his own wife, Priya. They painted a picture of a man who had allowed rage to consume him entirely, disregarding the value of human life in his pursuit of vengeance. On the other side, the defense sought to present Ravi as a victim, a man who had been deceived, manipulated, and pushed to his breaking point. They highlighted the years of loyalty and love Ravi had shown, his sacrifices for a wife who ultimately betrayed him in the most heart-wrenching way. Witnesses spoke of Ravi's integrity, his hard work, and his trusting nature. The defense argued that his actions were not those of a premeditated killer but of a man driven to the edge by circumstances beyond his control. The trial was long and emotionally charged. Priya's letter became a key piece of evidence, revealing her affair with Arjun and her involvement in his criminal activities. It was undeniable proof of the betrayal that had unraveled Ravi's life. Testimonies from neighbors and locals further painted a complex picture of Ravi as both victim and perpetrator, a man trapped in a storm of his own making. As the trial drew to a close, the courtroom awaited the verdict with bated breath. The judge, in his final statement, acknowledged the profound tragedy of the case. He spoke of the devastating consequences of deceit and the irreversible damage caused by Ravi's actions. Ultimately, Ravi was sentenced to life in prison, with the possibility of parole after 20 years. For Ravi, however, the true punishment began long before the gavel fell. The weight of his actions bore down on him, an ever-present reminder of the man he had been and the man he had become. In his prison cell, Ravi spent his days in quiet reflection, haunted by the memories of a love that had turned into a nightmare. The faces of those he had killed, the laughter of Priya as she mocked him, and the final moments of chaos replayed in his mind endlessly. Pushkar, too, bore the scars of the tragedy. The once vibrant town was overshadowed by the dark tale of Ravi Desai. His name became synonymous with betrayal and heartbreak, a cautionary tale for generations to come. Tourists and locals alike whispered about the mechanic who had given everything for love, only to lose himself in the aftermath of its betrayal. Years passed, and the story of Ravi Desai faded from the headlines, but for Ravi, time stood still. In the solitude of his cell, he found moments of clarity and acceptance. He began to write letters to the families of those he had wronged, apologizing for the pain he had caused. While many went unanswered, it was his way of seeking redemption, however small. In the quiet hours of the night, Ravi often thought of his mother and siblings, of the life he had left behind in his village near Agra. He wondered if they thought of him, if they remembered the man he used to be. In those moments, he found solace in the memories of simpler times, before love and betrayal had torn his world apart. Though Ravi Desai's story is one of tragedy, it is also a reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of betrayal. In the end, Ravi was not defined solely by his actions but by the complex web of love, pain, and humanity that had led him there. This story serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of trust and the devastating consequences of betrayal. Ravi's life, marked by perseverance and integrity, unraveled due to misplaced trust and emotional turmoil. It's a cautionary tale about the importance of communication, self-awareness, and the need to address problems before they escalate. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, share, and comment. What would you have done in Ravi's situation? Let us know your thoughts, and stay tuned for more stories of love, betrayal, and the human spirit.